Oh, I can change that. Bruh. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Happy Monday. Good evening. I don't need these on. Hi, guys. Okay. Hi, Pedro. Hello and happy freaking Monday. Welcome back to Book Club. We are reading the end of The Two Towers. Well, we're not reading it. We're discussing the last 3 chapters in book 3 that is held within The Two Towers book. Those chapters are titled Flotsam and Jetsam, The Voice of Saruman, and the final chapter, chapter 11, is The Palantir. Get up, you Tom, fool of a took. Let's go. Hi, Wild. Hi, Dar. Hi, Andrew. Hello. I hope you all are having great Mondays. Just as a heads up, with the end of this, with this being the end of a book, and this week being Thanksgiving, yeah, this week being Thanksgiving, we're not having book club the Monday in a week. We're not having book club on the 27th. We will resume on December 4th, starting book 4, chapters 1 and 2. Just as a heads up. Hold on. Let me see something. Change that. Okay. Is our stream still live? I just changed the setting. Yeah, okay, I think we are. Okay, cool. Hello, Asgar. Hello. 5 in the morning. Oh my gosh, good morning. Good morning. So just a heads up, no book club next Monday. We will resume in December with book 4, chapters 1 and 2. I will get that all scheduled next week. So we're only doing live scheduling a week in advance. Just to keep it all kind of keep like a schedule around it. Is the sound level low for anyone else? Yeah, let me know if it's too low for you guys. I have some new filters on my mic, so that could be doing it. If that is more disrupt, if it's too low, we can fix it. I'll just turn it up a little more. Okay. Okay, not unmanageable. Okay, I turned it up a little bit, so I'll just try not to get into the peaks of it. I hope that's okay. Okay, cool. I turned it up a little bit. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Okay, so I hope that's a little bit better, and I hope my mic isn't gatekeeping my voice too much with the filters I have on it. I'm just trying to get like a softer. This room is really echoey, and I have a really harsh, like high voice. So I'm trying to add filters to make it softer. But it is maybe creating too soft, too muddy of an experience. We'll see. Okay. So I like how Wild started their post in the community section, because I think what you said here about we start with a brief moment of levity. We start with a brief moment of levity that we've needed for a while, and that we're coming off the heels of our fight at Helm's Deep. Hi, Kelly. And we're coming into this moment of almost healing. Um, and and um, and I think Tolkien gives us this. I think Tolkien does this a lot, where we have these really, really intense moments, and then he weaves in moments of brevity, moments of levity, moments of humor, moments of rest, moments of recovery. We saw that when we went to Lothlorien. We saw that with the elves really heavily, and we're seeing that again here. Maybe not as much of a punch of rest because we pick back up pretty heavily. We don't have a lot of time for it. We have but a moment, but it feels longer than it truly is, right? and I do think that is one of the most beautiful things Tolkien gives us, is this. He meets us at this human need for rest. Because I think if you're always, like, in a book this long too, it's like to always go, to always be in a moment of danger, to always be running away or not connecting, not getting those moments of rest. I feel that it would be exhausting to read and exhausting to experience as well. So I do love that. I do love that he's added this in for us more than once, but specifically here. So we get to we're outside of Isengard, where we come to in chapter 9. And something that I realized as I was reading the beginning of this chapter was I realized all of a sudden that Merry and Pippin hadn't been surprised to see Gandalf, because at the end of the last chapter we had it was Gandalf and the King of Rohan, Éomer, and 12 riders, and then Legolas and Gimli, right? Had come up. They were they were coming to Isengard, and they come across Merry and Pip, who were waiting for them, kind of as messengers, and they were specifically told to keep a lookout. Giving our main characters the humanity of rest is necessary for a lot of reasons. Yes, the humanity of rest, so beautifully said. The book got time for that. The movie needs to push the action harder to keep viewers on their toes. Yeah, true. Original nautical definitions. Flotsam, items unintentionally lost from a ship. Jetsam, items intentionally thrown away from a ship. Actually, thank you, Andrew, because I did not know what those words meant. Tolkien had a good pacing of build up, fight, rest, etc. Yeah. I think Wilde's hits it on the head with calling it the humanity of rest, though, too. Like, it is so important for something so long as these books, as this story, to weave in those humanity aspects. But like I was saying, I had not realized last week, at least I don't think I had, when I was reading or when we were talking about it, that Merry and Pip had not been shocked to see Gandalf. But we come to find out, so Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn stay behind. Gandalf goes off to talk with Treebeard, and Merry and Pip have resources to feed the group. And so one thing to note is, of course, Gimli says, I do not want any orc stuff. And everyone can agree that we've all had enough of orcs. But the food that they have for us is man food, because Saruman had some servants that he fed very well. And so that's where this food is coming from, supposedly. Were these resources of that. And we take this moment to eat, and then we discuss the pipeweed that Merry and Pip have found, which They mention it a little bit in this chapter, and we come to find out later that this pipeweed comes from the Shire. So somehow, and I think it's like a year old, so somehow Saruman was getting pipeweed from the Shire. He had someone bringing it to him. Wild says 2 years now, but I think I had it written down as 1 year, but it was just from the year past. But not that long ago. Whether it's 1 or 2 years, it's not that long ago that someone had brought this pipeweed to the Shire, or to Saruman. The three were soon busy with their meal, and the two hobbits, unabashed, set to a second time. Yes, as hobbits are to do. Tolkien has good pacing. Oh yes, we said that. 7 meals a day. Gotta get that second breakfast. You know what I mean? Okay, so that is one of the most. So we of course learn from the Hobbit's perspective what has happened, what happened in Isengard, how it came to be this rubbled place. Where's Saruman? And of course, Gandalf and King Theoden are already off talking to Treebeard. So it's just this group of I guess it's 5. Not a small group by any means. Saruman suspected there may be a more important reason why Gandalf was so interested in the Shire. What are you calling, what's that? Where's that quote from? Or what are you calling back to on that? Okay. So let's see. I thought one thing that I just think is cute, it doesn't really add like a punch of value. Maybe not, but is that Pippin had been holding two wooden pipes for whatever reason. So he had a used one, and then he had an unused one that I have carried it a long way, though I don't know why. I never really expected to find any pipeweed on the journey when my own ran out, but now it comes in useful after all. So we have these two wooden pipes to smoke our pipeweed off, take a rest, lay back, and I think that this yes, they went out and seated themselves upon the piled stones before the gateway. They could see far down into the valley now. The mists were lifting and floating away upon the breeze. Now let us take our ease here for a little. We will sit on the edge of ruin and talk, as Gandalf says, while he is busy elsewhere. I feel a weariness, such as I have seldom felt before. He wrapped his gray cloak around him, hiding his mail shirt, and stretched out his long legs. Then he lay back and sent from his lips a thin stream of smoke. Look, said Pippin, Strider the Ranger has come back. He has never been away, said Aragorn. I am Strider, and Dunedain too, and I belong both to Gondor and to the north. Saruman was probably curious what Gandalf does there, since Hobbit probably seemed totally uninterested, and since he changed side, he was suspicious of everything. Well, yeah, as you're to do when you are a guilty scoundrel such as Saruman. We shall have to share pipes as good friends must in a pinch. Yeah, so we find out about the pipeweed that's from the Shire. And yeah, well, my thing is not necessarily so much of Saruman keeping an eye on where Gandalf is or the Shire, but who is getting the pipeweed to the Shire is more so what's calling out to me. Saruman is, of course, going to be skeptical of anything happening around him because he's committing an act of treason. So we take this moment we start to get a little tale. We learn that everything that's happened in this book has been 9 days. I think just in this book. My tale begins with waking up in the dark and finding myself all strung up in an orc camp, said Pippin. Let me see, what is today? The 5th of March in the Shire reckoning, said Aragon. Pippin made some calculations on his fingers. Only 9 days ago. Which, yeah, so all of this. So we've traveled a lot and done a lot and won a battle all in 9 days. I love that. But I do appreciate that we're resetting this moment of time because, as Pippin says, it seems a year since we were caught. Well, though half of it was like a bad dream, I reckon that 3 very horrible days followed. So to learn that it's all happened in just 9 days. And the first book covers how many? The first book doesn't cover 13 years. That's a very busy 9 days. Yeah. But I don't consider like past memories to be counted in time. So yeah, it doesn't cover 13 years. That would mean they were in Rivendell for 13 years. Anyway, yes, we're just here to talk about the 2 towers, these 3 chapters, the all encompassing catching up with this group of 5 from the past 9 days. Bilbo's party was in 3001. But is Bilbo's party, isn't that not a real chapter? I don't know, I'd have to grab book 1. But we're being a little pedantic. The journey of the group doesn't happen in 13 years, guys. Let's not. A brief moment of telling the birthday of Bilbo does not make a 13-year journey because we don't go from the birthday to then. Let's stay out of the weeds, please. We're just being a little funny, but it's a little tedious to take those kinds of points of view with a story like this. Okay, so yes, Kelly, yes. Okay, so Aragon first, before the tales begin, he gives the Merry and Pip back their treasures. He gives them back their knives, which they never thought they would see again. He also gives Pippin back his brooch that he had dropped as a clue for Aragon, should Aragon be tracking them, which he didn't know for sure when that happened, right? And Aragon says, I have kept it safe, for it is a very precious thing. I know, said Pippin. It was a wrench to let it go, but what else could I do? Nothing else. One who cannot cast away a treasure at need is in fetters. You did rightly. The cutting of the bands on your wrists, that was smart work, said Gimli. Luck served you there, but you seized your chance with both hands, one might say. And set us up a pretty riddle, said Legolas. I wondered if you had grown wings. Aragon, and here also, yes. I think this moment, so we've talked a little bit about how Tolkien has this like ability to weave in these moments of rest, these humanity moments that make this feel more real, in my opinion. And then we have this moment that even though we're having this like lighter moment of rest and recovery, we're also having this moment of like, we're also having a heart to heart. We have these tender, beautiful moments between this group that they care very much for each other, even though it's been only 9 days. That's 9 days of turmoil. That's 9 days of thinking, um, not knowing if your friends, your companions, the people you've been traveling with and getting to know, if they're alive, right? And so we have this moment, this tender moment, and it's just enough. We get just enough of a tender moment, and then we move on from it without it being like, without it holding us down. And because I don't really know this group. Now, there are some that maybe would be open to lengthening the emotional moment, right? 9 days of constant terrible stress. But I think I think there's still so much to do that I don't know that they want to be as vulnerable as to lengthen this tender moment. But they just want each other to know, like, I see you, I respect you, I've missed you, and I'm so glad you're okay. Now let's move on. What actually happened? Because who is Treebeard? What is Treebeard? You met an Ent. It's true. It's real. It's not just a story. They're actually alive. They actually came forward and came to Isengard. Tell us about that. We have this tender moment, and we move along swiftly, or as Treebeard might say, we move along hastily. And so we do learn. So the Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are kind of awestruck at the fact that the hobbits have escaped, right? And Pippin's like, unfortunately, we did not grow wings, but you did not know about Grishnak. He shuddered and said no more, leaving Merry to tell of those last horrible moments, the pawing hands, the hot breath, and the dreadful strength of Grishnak's hairy arms. All this about the orcs of Barad-dûr Lugburs, as they call it. Makes me uneasy, said Aragorn. The Dark Lord already knew too much, and his servants also, and Grishnak evidently sent some message across the river after the quarrel. The Red Eye will be looking toward Isengard, but Saruman, at any rate, is in a cleft stick of his own cutting. Yet, whichever side wins, his outlook is poor. Things began to go all wrong for him the moment his orcs set foot in Rohan. So we know that Sauron is looking at Isengard for one, the ring, and two, for as much as Saruman has his eyes on Gandalf and what seems like everything, Gandalf, Rohan, etc., Sauron has his eyes very heavily on Saruman, which comes in handy today quite beautifully, doesn't it? Yes, 9 days of constant terrible stress, and then we get a little laugh over tobacco. A little laugh, although, we have a few laughs here and there. It is a pretty, serious conversation, all things considered. Okay, so 5 nights prior to this, Merry's like, okay, now we come to the part you know nothing about. So we conclude that we very swiftly conclude and get through the little parts of the riddle the group wanted to know about that they weren't able to piece together themselves. And now we pick up to where Merry and Pip met the Ents. And we swiftly go through this because as the reader, we know all of this. So from a perspective of reading something you already know, we've said this before, we don't necessarily need to hear Merry and Pip tell the entire story to Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. But we get these little moments that are like, here's a swift overview of what happened so that we as the reader can feel included in the conversation as it's going on. In my opinion, that is how it felt to me, was like, let's get you included in this, but also let's not bog down on the things that the reader already knows about, because how for books that are so long, we don't need to make them any longer, right? One thing that I think Tolkien did a lot of in these 3 chapters was and maybe he's always, I suppose now I should just say he's always been doing this, but I noticed it a lot here, was that he's using the presence of the air to help set the mood. And an example about that, when we're talking about the Ents, is that the forest had felt as tense as if a thunderstorm was brewing inside it. Then all at once it exploded. I wish you could have heard their songs as they marched. If Saruman had heard it, he would be 100 miles away by now, even if he had to run on his own legs. Though Isengard be strong and hard, as cold as stone and bare as bone, we go to war, to hew the stone and break the door. So we learned there was much more of that song, but it didn't make sense to the hobbits. It was like a music of horns and drums. And even as Merry and Pip were moving with the forest, or moving with Treebeard and the Ents, they didn't realize that the rest of the forest had begun to move with them. Merry even says he thought he was dreaming about it, but Treebeard said that it was the Hurons, or so the Ents call them. So they're Ents that are almost tree-like. They're Ents that have become almost tree-like. We've heard about them before, so we see them coming back. And this is what Tolkien has been weaving in different ways about the forest waking up. What's interesting here is I didn't know or think that the Ents and the Hurons would have different goals. So we come to find out that the Ents' goal was to go to Isengard, and at some point the Hurons turn away and they go towards, what I imagine is they go towards Helm's Deep, because their issue is with the orcs. So the Ents have issue with Saruman, and the Hurons have issue with the orcs. So they have these different battles that they wish to fight, and yeah, I think it's a great personification of the forest in general, of it being this like they being this entity that has its own feelings but isn't entirely one-minded about it. So one of the lines that describes them, it says, there is a great power in them, and they seem to be able to wrap themselves in shadow. It is difficult to see them moving, but they do. They can move very quickly if they are angry. You stand still looking at the weather, maybe, or listening to the rustling of the wind, and then suddenly you find that you are in the middle of a wood with great groping trees all around you. They still have voices and can speak with the Ents. That is why they are called Hurons, but they have become wild, dangerous. I should be terrified of meeting them if there were no true Ents about to look after them. So they're not only do they have different motives, but they also have different like a harsher personality potentially. Or maybe a more devious, maybe quicker to anger. I guess they do move quickly if they are angry. So there's that. Behind the scenes, the original draft description was that they were trees that had been awakened, reversed from Merry's Lord of the Rings thoughts. Who's Merry? Oh, Merry and Pip. I don't know why. Sorry, there's an ad coming. Okay. So originally they were just trees that had been awakened. They weren't like angry. They didn't have like a different goal or whatnot. Is that what you're saying? because Mary is saying that they are trees that were awakened. They will, well, because I think like not to get too bogged down into it, but like the description that we've gotten of the Hurons is that they were ant-like, more ant-like, that became more tree-like, but they've been more tree-like of late. So like I would still say they are trees that have become awakened, because Gandalf will say a lot of what's weaved into this moment is that we hear that the forest is awakening, the trees are awakening, and so I think it's still true and fair to say that they're trees that were awakened. Yeah. I mean, it says that they are ants that have become almost like trees. But I think the inverse of that is also true. Or not necessarily true, but I think the way that it's described is not always that they are ants, that they are trees that are awakening, that the forest is awakening. A wild middle ground between trees and ends. Yes. Yeah. That is definitely, that is for sure. So they are the ones I imagine that went to Helm's Deep. I don't know. I think. Um so what's interesting though is we get through we learn that do we when do we learn? No, okay. So we learned that everyone had like kind of creeped down to the north side of Isengard, and there were no signs of enemies because Saruman had not thought about this at all. But what Saruman had made a plan for was to send a last blast of enemies out to, I believe he was going to Helm's Deep. And sorry, per usual. Need to drink the water. Okay. So Saruman had sent out, like, had blared the trumpets. Yes. I don't know much about this war or about the horsemen of Rohan, but Saruman seems to have meant to finish off the king and all his men with one final blow. So there's so much catastrophe, hi Vidi, in these chapters, right? I think I'm using that word correctly. But there's so many examples of like things just going wrong but right at the same time. And this works out in our favor, right? In two ways, because this is, I think, why the Hurons decide to walk away from Isengard versus staying at Isengard, is because they see these orcs running to something and they want to go take down those orcs versus staying at Isengard and taking down just Saruman, as I think, they see it. What we do miss in this moment is that Saruman was outside and had realized that the Ents were there and had started to run back inside. Hold on, I want to finish this thought before we circle back for a second. Who was it? One of the Beachbone. No. Beachbone died. Oh, that's sad. That's not the right end. Okay, well, we'll circle back to that. Saruman had escaped. One of the Ents had seen Saruman running back inside and had tried to catch him. So the orcs are escaping. Well, they're escaping Isengard, which is lucky for them to some extent, right? But also, this is the moment where the Hurons are like, okay, we're going to follow the orcs. They took an hour to pass out of the gates. Some went off down the highway to the fords, and some turned away and went eastward. I thought things looked very black for Rohan, but Treebeard did not move. He said, "My business is with Isengard tonight, with rock and stone." But though I could not see what was happening in the dark, I believe the Hurons began to move south. As soon as the gates were shut again, their business was with orcs. Quick beam. Thank you, Wild. I was like, his name. I think I got ahead of myself there. Because I think it's interesting. I think we, in the details of the fight, or the details of what happened to take down Isengard, is really interesting. Of course, we have these great descriptions of these giant tree troll-like beings tearing down physical walls with their many-fingered hands, right? But we also learn that arrows are no use against Ents. They hurt them, of course, and infuriate them like stinging flies. But an Ent can be stuck as full of orc arrows as a pincushion and take no serious harm. And also we learn that there would have to be a great many axemen to one Ent. A man that hacks once at an Ent never gets a second chance, never gets a chance of a second blow. A punch from an Ent's fist crumbles up iron like thin tin. When Treebeard had got a few arrows in him, he began to warm up, to get positively hasty, as he would say. And then the hobbits say, "An angry Ent is terrifying. Their fingers and their toes just freeze onto rock, and they tear it up like bread crust." So the description of how the Ents are tearing down Isengard is so well done, using things that and I think we've talked about this before, right? Using these like that's fine. I think those were gunshots. Using these things that we as the reader, we as humans can understand, right? Of course, there's some examples of things that would make sense in Middle Earth. Bread crust. I'm sure there were stinging flies, etc. But we know that sometimes the language can take on a more modern day approach to describing the events. And I believe we chalk that up to the translation of it, right? The hastiest of Ents. I love, ever since Treebeard has brought the word hasty into the vocabulary of this book, we've never left it behind, and I couldn't be happier about it. It was like watching the work of a great tree roots in 100 years, all packed into a few moments. That's a beautiful description, Andrew. It's a lighthearted description, but as a reader, you feel watching it was a holy shit moment to Merry and Pip. Yes, it is a lighthearted description, but it does. I think what's the most important thing that I imagine Tolkien wanted us to understand between arrows felt like fly stings. Axes couldn't take the Ents down. They were tearing apart these stone walls like they were pieces of bread crust. I think it just goes to show how powerful and strong the Ents are. And you almost have this moment of you're like, okay, well, this is going to be an easy job, right? They're going to easily succeed. They're going to take down Saruman. They're going to take down Isengard in the snap of a finger. Oh, we have this little moment though. So, because Merry and Pip don't know a lot about Saruman, right? But they know that he's supposed to be this great wise wizard, and they've seen this other great wise wizard, Gandalf. And to them, they have this moment where they're like, I don't know what Saruman thought was happening, but anyway, he did not know how to deal with it. His wizardry may have been falling off lately. Of course, But anyway, I think he has not much grit, not much plain courage alone in a tight place without a lot of slaves and machines and things, if you know what I mean. Very different from old Gandalf. I wonder if his fame was not all along mainly due to his cleverness in settling at Isengard. Aragorn quickly comes in and is like, nope, once he was as great as his fame made him. His knowledge was deep and his thought was subtle and his hands marvelously skilled, and he had power of the minds of others. The wise he could persuade, and the smaller folk he could daunt. That power he certainly still keeps. There are not many in Middle Earth that I should say were safe, and if they were left alone to talk with him, even now when he has suffered a defeat, Gandalf, Elrond, and Galadriel perhaps, now that his wickedness has been laid bare, but very few others. So I think it's this moment of like you almost write off Saruman, you almost write off Isengard, but we have this double whammy here, right? Where Aragorn's like, no, don't. Saruman was once very, very powerful. Don't discount him. I think that's important. Then we learn that Saruman was outside and he was able to flee inside. Quick Beam is a gentle creature, but he hates Saruman all the more fiercely for being able to get away. And I love Quick Beam, but let me catch up. The wise he could persuade, and the smaller folk he could not. Which makes it even more interesting that they can't touch the Tower of Orthanc itself. Yes, incredibly interesting. I actually was shocked that they weren't able to do like any damage to it. It still kind of mind boggles me. I think to like get through it, I just kind of chalked it up to magic of some sort. But interested to know what you guys think about that. Of course, once Saruman's fled inside, we do learn that arrows can't hurt them, axes can't hurt them. But it would take a lot for an axe to take down an Ent. What can hurt a tree? What can hurt an Ent? But of course, fire. And so when Saruman had gone back safe inside Orthanc, he put all of his machinery to work, which had brought up fires and foul fumes. Several of the Ents got scorched and blistered. One of them, Beachbone, I think he was called, a very tall, handsome Ent, got caught in a spray of some liquid fire and burned like a torch. That sent them mad. I thought that they had been really roused before, but I was wrong. I saw what it was like at last. It was staggering. They roared and boomed and trumpeted until stones began to crack and fall at the mere noise of them. So Merry and Pip it is kind of interesting that Merry and Pip are just like watching all of this happen, right? I mean, of course, from watching the movie, I knew that they were there and they saw all of this, but like I think in the movie they were always sitting on Treebeard. But it's still I don't know, the description in the book is more grand than the movie did it justice, in my opinion. I've associated the strength of Orthanc against Ents with some sort of masonry that was used to build it. There are no joints or cracks in the rock in which a root could take hold. Okay, that is great. It is, yeah, it is. I remember reading that it was smooth, and that made sense. But magic is also a good explanation. I wasn't quite sure. I think the book honestly said something like magic like, which doesn't necessarily mean that it was magic. And so I was happy for my brain to have something to clasp onto, to move away from it, to not overthink it. But it just being like smooth, of course, makes sense. I guess I just would have assumed they could have just punched it. But In the book, you thought of Orthanc as a solid crystal. It's nice that they show fire against the Ents in the film, and then we see the Ent putting out the fire in the flood, which is even nicer. Yeah, yeah. I remember seeing the Ent on fire in the film and being like, that. I think it looked like he had like it had got. I can't remember exactly in this moment, but I feel like it like went on his hair, and it looked like his hair was on fire. You know, it was almost like a silly moment, but this made it the book. I don't know. I really appreciate the description of this fight in the book. The description of the Ents v Isengard in the book. Um, so we see this moment. The Ents kind of lean into their hastiness. They lean into their anger. They lean into their frustration, and they tear everything down that they can. Okay, yeah. So when they try to actually bring down Orthanc itself, many of the Ents were hurling themselves against the Orthanc rock, but that defeated them. It is very smooth and hard. Some wizardry is in it, perhaps, older and stronger than Saruman's. Anyway, they could not get a grip on it or make a crack in it, and they were bruising and wounding themselves against it. So Treebeard went out into the ring and shouted. His enormous voice rose above all the din. There was a dead silence suddenly. In it we heard a shrill laugh from a high window in the tower. That had a queer effect on the Ents. They had been boiling over. Now they became cold, grim as ice, and quiet. So the juxtaposition of the Ents being able to harvest this anger and this frustration and to tear down everything they could around Isengard, right? And then to have this bone-chilling moment where they all move away. And I think the buildup of the writing about the Ents really plays into this entire section very well, right? Because the way that we've been described the Ents is that their strides are very long, but they move quite slowly. So you've almost got this like really eerie, suspenseful, like almost scary to see something move a long distance, but slowly at the same time. And with great fire within them, with a great anger boiling in them that wishes to take down everything they can here. But for them to move away cold, grim, icy, and quietly, to take their next act upon Isengard really was bone-chilling stuff to read. So the Ents and the Hurons were digging great pits and trenches and making great pools and dams, gathering all the waters of the Isen and every other spring and stream they could find. At dusk, they come back. And at dusk, Treebeard himself at least comes back, and he's humming and booming. He seems pleased. He stands, he stretches. Merry and Pip ask him if he's tired. Tired? Tired? Well, no, not tired, but stiff. I need a good draught of Entwash. We have worked hard. We have done more stone cracking and earth gnawing today than we have done in many a long year before. But it is nearly finished. When night falls, do not linger near the gate or in the old tunnel. Water may come through, and it will be foul water for a while, until all the filth of Saruman is washed away. So as Merry and Pip are trying to figure out where they're gonna go, suddenly a great horse comes striding up like a flash of silver. It was already dark, but I could see the rider's face clearly. It seemed to shine, and all his clothes were white. I just sat up staring with my mouth open. I tried to call out and couldn't. There was no need. He halted just by us and looked down at us. Gandalf, I said at last, but my voice was only a whisper. Did he say, "Hello, Pippin? This is a pleasant surprise." No, indeed. He said, "Get up, you Tom full of a took. Where in the name of wonder in all this ruin is Treebeard? I want him quick." I was surprised, because neither of them seemed surprised at all. he, Treebeard, began to pull down a bit more of the walls in a leisurely sort of way, just to amuse himself. I've said it from the beginning. I freaking love the way Treebeard is written. I think he's a beautiful character. And I'm so happy we have him. Tolkien's works when talking about the world, or should I try and keep it within the trilogy itself? Huther, it depends on the it depends. That's a great question. I think so, and sorry it took me a second to get back to that. Digging into the Silmarillion can get complicated quickly, but it is appreciated. It's I do appreciate like the expanding on the knowledge and getting those things. Silmarillion, it's probably like the best example of things that we love to. I love when people throw those things in, facts and information that widen the depths of this world and add to the encyclopedia of knowledge for all of us. Hi, Scotty, lip slaps love. Yeah, we've been digging into it. Yes, lightly. So my recommendation is like kind of keep it like as relevant as possible, but also like feel free to drop it in. Absolutely. What's fascinating to me is that Tolkien clearly adored trees, but he wasn't always kind with them. He was deeply respectful of their powers and aged wisdom. Yes. Yep. Tolkien's writing of the trees and the elves is some of my favorite. I think when we were in Lothlorien, it was that the writing of that experience blew me away because I could tell how much Tolkien loved writing that part. There just was so much love infused in it. And someone told me that he truly did love the elves. So it does make sense that he would infuse some of that same passion into the trees, given the relationship between elves and trees. And as it were, too. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit behind. Yes. Also, thank you for asking. But yeah, we like to dive into the Silmarillion. Of course, we don't want to get too bogged down into it, but we're happy to expand on it. Magic is a weird thing in Tolkien's world. The hobbits ask the elves about elvish magic, and the elves are totally clueless what they mean. Superior tech can look like magic for others who don't know it. Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, because all of that was from the perspective of the hobbits. So for them to conclude possibly some magic in it, or some wizardry, potentially not wizardry, just a smooth stone. Pippin, did he say hello, Pippin? No. He said, get up, you Tom, full of a took. Hi, Remy. Hello. The Old Forest. Yeah, Lothlorien. Yeah. The Old Forest. Watching your video reaction show. Thank you. Welcome on in. Hi. Wood and water, stock and stone I can master, but there is a wizard to manage here. Yes. So, okay, yes. Back into where we're at. In this chapter, we get this return of Gandalf. Now, at the beginning of today, I said I didn't even realize when we rolled up to Isengard with Gandalf that Merry and Pip didn't seem surprised at all to see him there. And obviously, now I know that it's because they weren't surprised. He had been there a few nights prior to talk to Treebeard. So remember when we're with the Rohirrim, Gandalf mysteriously disappears. This is clearly what he went to go do. He came to find Treebeard. So as Andrew had just put in, Treebeard goes, I am glad you have come. Wood and water, stock and stone, I can master, but there is a wizard to manage here. Gandalf is straight to the point. I need your help. You've done much, but I need more. I have about 10,000 orcs to manage. So the two go off. They have a discussion. And and then Gandalf comes back. He seems relieved. He seems merry. He said he was happy to see the hobbits, and effectively he leaves. He goes, "This is a perilous night, and I must ride fast, but the dawn may be brighter, and if so, we shall meet again. Take care of yourselves and keep away from Orthanc. Goodbye." Um, and so one of my other favorite things, Treebeard comes up and he says to the hobbits, "Well, I find you are not such hasty folk as I thought. You said much less than you might and no more than you should. This is a bundle of news and no mistake. Well, now Treebeard must get busy again." Yes, Kelly, great example. Saruman invented black powder, being called magic. Um, yes, not such hasty folks after all, are we, Treebeard? Um, Treebeard says Huron's their help. That he goes away. We don't see him until morning. So then the water comes rushing in. The Ents break the dams, and the water. Okay, let me just. It might have been at midnight when the Ents broke the dams and poured all the gathered water through a gap in the northern wall down into Isengard. Isengard began to fill up with black, creeping streams and pools. They glittered in the last light of the moon, and as they spread over the plain, every now and then the waters found their way down into some shaft or spout hole. Great white steams hissed up, smoke rose in billows. They were explosions and gusts of fire. One great coil of vapor went whirling up, twisting round and round Orthanc, until it looked like a tall peak of cloud, fiery underneath and moonlit above. And still more water poured in, until at last Isengard looked like a huge flat saucepan, all steaming and bubbling. Aragon mentions they'd seen a cloud of smoke and steam from Isengard the night before, and they had feared Saruman was up to that Saruman was brewing some new devilry. And Pippin goes, "Not he." He was probably choking and not laughing anymore. By the morning yesterday morning, the water had sunk down into the holes and there was a dense fog. So the water filled up, but then the water sank back down. I think this is where the Hurons left to take the trees to Helm's Deep at Gandalf's request. Okay, thank you, Dar. Thank you. Yeah, I guess I assumed they had left when the orcs left. I think did no. I know because I think they did. Maybe there were more that hadn't left, but I believe we do even because I think we already said bye to them. Yeah, because I think they said they saw them going that way. Yeah. When the orcs had left Isengard, we get a line that says, "But though I could not see what was happening in the dark, I believe that the Hurons began to move south as soon as the gate was shut again. Their business was with orcs." Yeah. Well, but it is confusing. You're right. Okay. So, great. Where were we? We've gotten to the flooding of Isengard, which is all great. Holding on for your favorite segment from The Voice. I am so excited to get to The Voice of Saruman. Is there anything else super important we need to discuss here in Flotsam and Jetsam? We now know. Okay, I did mention this. There's this rebuild. So we almost have this okay, so the Ents have done so much. But we have this moment of rebuilding tension. Since the water has been sinking again, there must be outlets somewhere from the caves underneath, which again, something we've talked about a little today is Tolkien's ability to build tension. We have a conclusion to the tension, such as Helm's Deep, right? Then we have these chapters of healing, of levity, of rest. And then we build tension again. And I always like to notice the moments when we build the tension again, because Tolkien does a really good job at it. He starts doing it really lightly, and then things will start to be really dramatic. So we learned that the water started sinking again. There must be outlets somewhere from the caves underneath, I think. If Saruman peeps out any windows, it must look an untidy, dreary mess. We felt very lonely, not even a visible Ent to talk to in all the ruin, and no news. We spent the night up on top there above the arch, and it was cold and damp, and we did not sleep. We had a feeling that anything might happen at any minute. Saruman is still in his tower. There was a noise in the night, like a wind coming up the valley. I think the Ents and Hurons that had been away came back then, but where they have all gone to now, I don't know. It was a misty, moisty morning when we climbed down and looked round again, and nobody was about. And that is about all there is to tell. It seems almost peaceful now after all the turmoil, and safer too somehow. Since Gandalf came back, I could sleep. There's a film change. In the film, Wormtongue gets to... Oh, yeah, because... That's right, we haven't even talked about that. Wormtongue comes back now, pretty much, in the story. Where in the movie, you're right, he's already there. But in the book, he gets there the morning of the day of the Gandalf/Theoden. Yeah, so he gets there before Gandalf and Theoden get here, right? So Gimli goes, there is one thing I wonder about. Wormtongue, you told Theoden he was with Saruman. How did he get there? So Pippin goes, oh yeah, I forgot about him. He did not get here till this morning. We had just lit the fire and had some breakfast. So he had been given a decision. Hold on. Okay, so he comes in, he sees the wreckage of Isengard in front of him. He is bewildered. He doesn't notice anyone else there at first. When he does, he gives out a cry and he tries to run away, but Treebeard takes 3 strides, puts out a long arm, and lifts him out of the saddle. His horse bolts in terror, and he grovels to Treebeard. He said he was Grima, friend and counselor of the king, and had been sent with important messages from Theoden to Saruman. I caught the sidelong looks he gave to Treebeard, and I said to myself, liar. Treebeard looked at him in his long, slow way for several minutes, till the wretched man was squirming on the floor. Then at last he said, I was expecting you, Master Wormtongue. Gandalf got here first, so I know as much about you as I need, and I know what to do with you. Put all the rats in one trap, said Gandalf, and I will. I am the master of Isengard now, but Saruman is locked in his tower, and you can go there and give him all the messages that you can think of. Of course, if we know anything about Wormtongue, we know that he is going to try to Wormtongue his way out of the situation. He's going to grovel. He's going to throw anyone else under the bus that he possibly freaking can. And so he does try that. And Treebeard says, but you have only 2 choices, to stay with me until Gandalf and your master arrive, or to cross the water. Which will you have? And he just says, I cannot swim. And Treebeard's like, the water is not deep. You will go away. So he wades off and he goes into Orthanc. And that is how Wormtongue is in Orthanc with Saruman. Thank you for saying that. That is a change from the film. And in the voice of Saruman, there is another big change in regards to Saruman and Wormtongue. Usually the tension starts again when Gandalf returns. You don't have to drag our man like that. You don't have to drag him like that. Put all the rats in one trap. I know, poor horsey. I know. So, now we round our way all the way back. Okay, so now we go on to the voice of Saruman. God bless. God bless it. We're an hour in. We have the voice of Saruman, and we have, which is chapter 10, but it is, you know, two more big things to cover. I know, I wish it wasn't always bad news when Gandalf shows up. Poor guy. Poor guy. Interesting. Okay. Was there a date on the barrels? Yes. It was the 1417 crop. That is last year's. No, the year before. There it is. Before, of course, now. A good year. Yes. Wild Eye, see, this is my apology to you. It was 2 years prior. Subtracting. There's calendar. From the calendar in Appendix B, the date is March 5th, 3019, which equates to March 5th, 1419 in the Shire reckoning by subtracting 1600. Because there's only, 30 days in each month in the Shire calendar? Interesting. Interesting. Okay, so now we go to the voice of Saruman, right? And so our goal here in this chapter, our goal is Gandalf needs to have a conversation with Saruman. He says anyone can come have this conversation, but be wary. Saruman is a powerful, powerful guy. Do not listen to his voice, I think is what he even says. I must pay Saruman a farewell visit. Dangerous and probably useful, but it must be done. Pippin asks if he can put a spell on them from a distance. And Gandalf says it's possible if you ride to his door with a light heart. But there is no knowing what he can do or may choose to try. A wild beast cornered is not safe to approach, and Saruman has powers you do not guess. Beware of his voice. Pippin's confusion is really that it's March. It was last year's crop when he left the Shire, and we all know that we forget time is a thing when we're busy doing all the time like he has been. Yes. Yes. You are so right about that. There are loose slabs that might tilt up and throw you down a pit if you don't take care. Tolkien reckons date in many different ways. He actually retroactively discovered how many years existed prior to the sun and moon even existing, and so our understanding of how time is measured. Is it true that, this is off topic, we won't get bogged down into this, but is it true that sharks existed before trees? I guess that would make sense. The ocean is older than land, right? Is that right? This is not the place for this conversation. I apologize. I apologize for that too. Okay, just checking something. Oh, yes. Start when we get to the lines of lore. If I don't remember about your post, feel free to remind me. Um, okay. The power of his voice is sadly not shown in the movie, although that probably is really hard to do. Yeah, that's a great point. Very few scorings and small flake-like splinters near the base were all the marks that it bore of the fury of the Ents. It's so sad to me. So sad. Okay, so um, so everyone decides to go to join for this conversation. Even Mary and Pip, who sat on the bottom step feeling both unimportant and unsafe. To no one's surprise, I was Gandalf originally wants to go up into the tower and have the conversation with Saruman, but to no one's surprise, Saruman is not going to let him inside. They really were stuck in the movie and dealing with Saruman, considering they kind of had to omit the concluding chapter of Return of the King. Well, we haven't read Return of the King yet, so I'm not familiar with what you're talking about there. But I guess we'll see. In what's looking like January or February, I think we'll probably February. I think where it looks like we're gonna end Two Towers, the first or second Monday of January, and I want to say each book takes us about a month. We'll probably end in February, maybe early March. Um, thank you all. Thank you. They mounted a flight of 27 broad stairs, weirdly precise. Tolkien is nothing if not weirdly precise, though. We can agree on that. So Wormtongue comes to the door and asks what they want. But of course, Gandalf sends him away and asks for Saruman. Saruman decides. When does he start talking to them? Okay. The window closed, they waited. Suddenly another voice spoke low and melodious. It is very sound of enchantment. Those who lived unwarily to that voice could seldom report the words that they heard, and if they did, they wondered, for little power remained in them. Mostly they remembered only that it was a delight to hear the voice speaking. All that it said seemed wise and reasonable, and desire awoke in them by swift agreement to seem wise themselves. When others spoke, they seemed harsh and uncouth by contrast, and if they gainsaid the voice, anger was kindled in the hearts of those under the spell. Tolkien is weirdly precise. See the pages of descriptions of individual groups of trees. See an entire encyclopedia or appendix for this book and the Silmarillion, which you could consider an encyclopedia of sorts. How the cinematic version just didn't show Saruman's end was the reason Christopher Lee and Jackson had a massive conflict and basically didn't talk anymore. Okay, I guess to me, we see Saruman die. I mean, maybe it's different. Maybe we're getting into the weeds of Return of the King, guys. Let's pull it back a little bit. Because to my knowledge, we see in the movie Saruman die. And in the book we don't. So You said how the cinematic version just didn't show Saruman's end was the reason. That's Kelly. I think you're accidentally spoiling the book, because in the cinematic version we do see Saruman die, as far as I know. So if that's not true, theatrical version. Okay, I've only seen the extended versions. Not in the cinematic versions. Okay. Okay. I understand. Thank you. And I'm with you now. That seems a silly thing to lose a friendship over. This is your favorite passage, and all that it said seemed wise and reasonable, and desire awoke in them by swift agreement to seem wise themselves. I, too, love that line. I highlighted it. No, for some totally different reason, but understand the confusion. Yes, sorry. I've only seen the extended version, so I jumped to conclusion there. Okay, so we get this beautiful description of this voice. Feels very spell-like, feels very enchanting. I like the juxtaposition that any other voice seemed harsh and uncouth by contrast. So the voice is whispering to them and urging them, and it almost seems like it's doing it one by one. I don't know if that's how I interpreted it or if that is how it's happening. Well, it said now with a gentle question, why must you disturb my rest? Will you give me no peace at all by night or day? Its tone was that of a kindly heart, aggrieved by injuries undeserved. They looked up astonished, for they had heard no sound of his coming, and they saw a figure standing at the rail, looking down upon them, an old man swathed in a great cloak, then color of which was not easy to tell, for it changed if they moved their eyes or if he stirred. And Gimli, who we didn't touch on this, but Gimli had wanted to come along to see if Saruman and Gandalf looked alike, and Gimli says, like and yet unalike. Things do get weird here with film. Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah, they did move some things around on the ending of. They basically put the last 3 books into Return of the King, yeah. Sauron, too, could charm people before he became hideous after the fall of Numenor. Oh, well then. Which, knowing that, it's interesting, because something we'll start to see here is that when Saruman's trying to, like, be kind and gracious, etc., etc., he's able to have this spell-like effect over everyone. But when he leans into any sort of frustration or anger, it almost seems like that spell starts to break. And it feels like these moments of, I think there's a line at the end which sums it up. So maybe I'll pause on that thought. So Theoden is not speaking. He opens his mouth to speak. He says nothing. He looks at the face of Saruman with its dark, solemn eyes bent down upon him, and then to Gandalf at his side, and he hesitates. The writers that are, of course, so important to reflect back on the history with Theoden and Rohan and the writers and Wormtongue, right? Because Wormtongue had been in Theoden's ear that Gandalf was bad, and it was kind of easy, almost unfortunately so, to do so, because the Wormtongue had more or less said that every time Gandalf comes around, bad things happen, which we've joked about today because it is kind of true that with Gandalf does come bad news. And of course, I'm sure we could break that down even more, but that's not really why we're here today. And so the writers, even though I feel like this spell is very easily cast on them because with Gandalf sitting right there, of course, they've already been primed, so to say, to distrust Gandalf. Um, so there's this over their hearts crept a shadow, the fear of a great danger, the end of the mark in darkness to which Gandalf was driving them, while Saruman stood beside a door of escape, holding it half open so that a ray of light came through. There was a heavy silence. Gimli breaks the silence, of course. The words of the wizard stand on their heads. In the language of Orthanc, help means ruin and saving means slaying. That is plain, but we do not come here to beg. Peace, said Saruman, and for a fleeting moment his voice was less suave, and a light flickered in his eyes and was gone. So we see this, again, like I said, we see these moments where the spell kind of breaks. This fire, this anger comes out. Still, Theoden's not answering. He's almost eerily silent. So Eomer speaks. Lord, hear me. Now we feel the peril that we were warned of. Have we ridden forth to victory only to stand at last amazed by an old liar with honey on his forked tongue? So would the trapped wolf speak to hounds if he could. If we speak of poisoned tongues, what shall we say of yours, young serpent? Said Saruman, and the flash of his anger was now plain to see. But come, Eomer's son, he went on in his soft voice again, to every man his part, valor in arms is yours. So again, this break in the spell almost is how it was like kind of coming across to me. Leave to a hard-headed, stubborn dwarf to call it out. Amen. I understand, Gimli. The friendship of Saruman and the power of Orthanc cannot be lightly overthrown. Cannot be lightly thrown aside. Whatever grievances, real or fancied, may lie behind. You have won a battle, but not a war. You may find the shadow of the wood at your own door next. Is it wayward and senseless and has no love for men? So Saruman is using everything he can. He's bringing the Ents into this. And he's like, you can't trust them, which is true. To his credit, that is true, because if the Ents wanted to come after us, they easily could. If anyone did something to anger them, they don't anger hastily. They would. They absolutely would. They wouldn't care. If the elves all of a sudden started chopping down the forest, they would for sure start to fight back, I would imagine. So Theoden finally speaks. So he says, we will have peace. Yes, we will have peace. We will have peace when you and all your works have perished, and the works of your dark master, to whom you would deliver us. You are a liar, Saruman, and a corrupter of men's hearts. You hold out your hands to me, and I perceive only a finger of the claw of Mordor, cruel and cold. Even if your war on me was just, as it was not, for were you 10 times as wise, you would have no right to rule me and mine for your own profit as you desired. Even so, what will you say of your torches in the Westfold and the children that lie dead there? And they hewed Hama's body before the gates of the Hornburg after he was dead. When you hang from a gibbet at your window for the sport of your own crows, I will have peace with you and Orthanc. So much for the house of Eorl. A lesser son of great sires am I, but I do not need to lick your fingers. Turn elsewhither, but I fear your voice has lost its charm. Saruman is giving a master class in manipulation here. Absolutely. It's impressive. Scary. He's almost the proverbial devil sitting on everyone's shoulder, playing on their fears and insecurities for his own benefit. Amen. The writing of Saruman is so well done. Of course, in the movie, well, the movie is going to be different. But in my opinion, the worst thing you can do when you're writing an evil character is make them insufferable. If if you can't, it's so easy to wish the downfall on a really insufferable villain in a book or a movie, right? But it's like, even though Saruman is so, we like don't root for him and we wish not for him to win, he never becomes like super, I don't know, he never becomes overwhelmingly insufferable. Which I think is to the benefit of the writing, because it's almost like, even though you're like, okay, finally, it makes me feel even better. I don't have to have any sort of like conflicting feelings about taking down an evil villain of sorts. I think when the moment the villain becomes insufferable, the story loses part of its charm. So yeah, Tolkien was a professor of language here, and it shows. And so we still get this very unlikable character without them being insufferable. And that is a really tight line for an author to toe. We hang on his every word. Yeah. We can see the charm seeping out of him. We understand it. And so it also makes it easier to understand why the writers or anyone else who's under his spell would be struggling with what's happening, or struggling with what to feel in these moments. Theoden's speech is excellent. Yeah, that too. Yeah. Yep. The riders gazed up at Theoden, like men startled out of a dream. Harsh as an old raven's, their master's voice sounded in their ears after the music of Saruman. But Saruman for a while was beside himself with wrath. He leaned over the rail as if he would smite the king with his staff. To some, suddenly it seemed that they saw a snake coiling itself to strike. And so his voice changes again. And so I think it's these voices changing. Gibbets and crows. Dotard, what is the house of Earl but a thatched barn where brigands drink in the reek and their brats roll on the floor among the dogs? His voice changes. I know not why I have had the patience to speak to you, for I need you not, nor your little band of gallopers as swift to fly as to advance. Theoden, horsemaster, long ago I offered you a state beyond your merit and your wit. I have offered it again, so that those whom you mislead may clearly see the choice of roads. You give me brag and abuse, so be it. Go back to your huts. So Saruman writes off Theoden, writes off Rohan, and he now turns his attention to Gandalf. How comes it that you can endure such company? For you are proud, Gandalf, and not without reason, having a noble mind and eyes that look both deep and far. Even now, will you not listen to my counsel? Our friendship would profit us both alike. Much we could still accomplish together to heal the disorders of the world. And of course, Saruman's playing to the deepest fears in everyone. Because of course, there's going to be people amongst this group listening that are like, well, they could, they would, they should, they would be powerful together. That does make sense if they work together. I don't see why it doesn't. So why should we trust anyone in this situation? Like, it's so beautifully tense. Neither Saruman or Sauron initially seized power by being horrible. Correct. Yeah. Yep. You're right there. And it's we because I think I think Saruman, it's easier to see, right? Because he's not as far gone as Sauron. And so you see this example of someone who, like, even Gandalf didn't know until he was locked up at the top of Orthanc that Saruman was bad. It was done so slowly over time. And to be fair, did Saruman know he was starting to go down an evil path when he started to go down it? Or did he just start making one decision? And then sometimes when you make decisions that toe the line of morality, time after time, if you go to a more negative side of that choice, or you let things slide or you look past things, little by little, you're able to justify bigger and bigger acts of evil. We're going to call it evil for the sake of um, being succinct about it. But it's much more complex than just evil. And sometimes it's not pure evil. Sometimes it's, toes a line, I'm sure. The books are poetry. The movies barely touch on, but do well enough. Yes, Chris. Also, hi, Chris. Old servant Sauron in ancient times was pretty horrible. Oh, was he, Kelly? Yeah, I guess I don't know too much about Sauron's past. I, of course, know more about Saruman's from the perspective of Gandalf. I've always given Saruman the benefit of the doubt that he started with good intentions, but I'm unable to prove that. I think I've done the same. I think it's one of those things, like, because how do you have the trust of someone like Gandalf? I don't know. It's a long walk. It is a long walk to tragedy. Yeah. Yep. I think Saruman didn't see any way of winning and thought about the ring too much, and even thinking about it can make you want it. The more you think about it, the more you want it. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's definitely how the long road to where we're at started. The common thread between Sauron and Saruman is the desire for control, not necessarily the pursuit of power by itself, but the ability to usurp others' will for your own. That is so well said. Yes. Okay. Wow. This, I think, has been one of our best conversations. The power, Saruman. Saruman really is such a great example of where your choices can take you, where temptation can take you. And also, we know that Gandalf is worried about being corrupted, and so it's like Gandalf can understand as well. And I think that's why there's this wiseness to Gandalf, right? Because he knows that he's not above being corrupted. That corruption is not something you're born into. You're not born corrupt. Maybe you're born into a situation, an environment that's more corrupt, and so maybe you're more corrupt at a younger age, but no one is straight out the womb or straight out the ether, as I imagine a wizard is just born out of thin air. No one is created corrupt originally. I mean, maybe in a fantasy world there's examples for sure, but like corruption doesn't necessarily happen overnight. And on a realistic thought, there wasn't really a way to win against Sauron without the ring. Sauron thinks that too. He is scared of somebody using the ring. Saruman did start out good. It was his use. You think it all comes down to the Palantir and contesting with Sauron when he moved to evil? Sauron won that contest. If you want to get really philosophical, what does it say about Tolkien himself, the master of these stories, to tell the tale about the evils of control? I told myself I'd go to the gym tonight, and then the gym does close at 10 p.m. So, to get really philosophical, I'm going to have to pause that one. I think my goal is that we'll keep like these. I want to do, after we finish the entire series, do like a philosophical stream like this. So we'll do like, we'll finish the Two Towers. That'll take us 5 weeks to finish. And then we'll do Return of the King, which I imagine will take us about 2 months to finish. And then I want to end our Lord of the Rings book club series with like a philosophical deep dive where we can just kind of like debate. And I know to some extent Tolkien wouldn't love like the metaphors or whatnot. But we're human. Free will is very important to Tolkien and redemption. We could at least discuss the themes. I'll keep cooking on that thought. Anyway, just putting a pin in that. That'll be on like March, but which is why Gandalf is here at all. But that's definitely getting into the weeds. Okay. Shall we keep going? Let's keep going because we are at an hour 36 and we need to finish off with a Palantir, which is a little more meaty of a chapter. So Saruman and Gandalf are having this conversation, and so great was the power that Saruman exerted in this last effort that none that stood within the hearing were unmoved. But now the spell was wholly different. Okay, well, let's read Saruman's speech. Unsay, he mused, as if puzzled. Okay, so Gandalf says, let me back up one more line. What have you to say that you did not say at our last meeting? Or perhaps you have things to unsay? Recalling back to Gandalf and Saruman before Saruman locked him on top of 4 things. Unsay, he mused. Unsay? I endeavored to advise you for your own good, but you scarcely listened. You are proud and do not love advice, having indeed a store of your own wisdom, but on that occasion you erred. I think, misconstruing my intentions willfully. I fear that in my eagerness to persuade you, I lost patience, and indeed I regret it. For I bore you no ill will, and even now I bear none. Though you return to me in the company of the violent and the ignorant, how should I? Are we not both members of a high and ancient order, most excellent in Middle Earth? Our friendship would profit us both alike. Much we could still accomplish together to heal the disorders of the world. Let us understand one another and dismiss from thought these lesser folk. Let them wait on our decisions for the common good, and I am willing to redress the past and to receive you. Will you not consult with me? Will you not come up? So great was the power that Saruman exerted in this last effort that none that stood within hearing were unmoved. But now the spell was wholly different. They heard the gentle remonstrance of a kindly king with an erring but much loved minister, but they were shut out. So everyone else gets shut out of this conversation. Of loftier mold, these two were made, revered and wise. It was inevitable that they should make alliance. Even in the mind of Theoden, the thought took shape like a shadow of doubt. He will betray us. He will go. We shall be lost. Then Gandalf laughed. The fantasy vanished like a puff of smoke. So Gandalf invites Saruman to come down. Isengard has proved less strong than your hope and fancy made it. So may others think things in which you still have trust. Would it not be well to leave it for a while, to turn to new things perhaps? A shadow passed over Saruman's face, then it went deathly white before he could conceal it. They saw through the mask the anguish of a mind in doubt, loathing to stay and dreading to leave its refuge. For a second he hesitated, and no one breathed. Then he spoke, and his voice was shrill and cold. Pride and hate were conquering him. Will I come down? Does an unarmed man come down to speak with robbers out of doors? I can hear you well enough here. I am no fool, and I do not trust you, Gandalf. They do not stand openly on my stairs, but I know where the wild wood demons are lurking at your command. But you need not fear your skin. I do not wish to kill you or hurt you, as you would know, if you really understood me, and I have the power to protect you. I'm giving you a last chance. You can leave Orthanc free. So Gandalf gives Saruman this chance to leave Orthanc, and he literally means, I will not bind you. All I want from you is your staff, and he wanted something else. Surrender me the key of Orthanc and your staff. And Gandalf says, the reasons for leaving you can see from your windows. Others will occur to your thought. Your servants are destroyed and scattered. Your neighbors you have made your enemies, and you have cheated your new master, or tried to do so. When his eye turns hither, it will be the red eye of wrath. So Gandalf is like, I'm giving you this. You can go for it. I just need your staff, and I need the key to Orthanc. And honestly, go do whatever you need to do. You have so many enemies at this point. The guest who has escaped from the roof will think twice before he comes back in by the door. Yeah. Saruman seems close to coming down. Unfortunately, close only counts in horseshoes, hand grenades, and slow dancing. Beautifully said. There's that control again. Saruman believing that he controls the Ents. He cannot fathom a world without control. That's a great point, because we are under no illusion that Gandalf or anyone controls the Ents. The Ents control themselves. And you're so right. Saruman thinks that with control you have power. And this is a great example of, it's not control that gives you power, but understanding the power and the unique power that each thing, person, race, etc. holds, and using that to a friendly advantage, or just being respectful, that keeps doors open. To put it very lightly, that could be a very deep wormhole to dive into. Saruman has victim mentality. I love that. Later, yes, when you also have the keys of Barad-dûr yourself, I suppose, and the crowns of 7 kings and the rods of the 5 wizards. Yeah. So, and this is where we have a huge change, movie to book, right? Because Gandalf is able to command this voice of power against Saruman now, and calls him back against his will. And says, I have not finished. You have become a fool, Saruman, and yet pitiable. You might still have turned away from folly and evil and have been of service, but you choose to stay and gnaw the ends of your old plots. Stay then, but I warn you, you will not easily come out again, not unless the dark hands of the east stretch out to take you. Saruman, he cried, and his voice grew in power and authority. Behold, I am not Gandalf the Grey, who you betrayed. I am Gandalf the White, who has returned from death. You have no color now, and I cast you from the order and from the council. He breaks Saruman's staff, and that is when Saruman cries and falls back and crawls away. And at that moment, a shining thing comes hurtling down from above, the Palantir, which was thrown to us by none other than Wormtongue, for whatever freaking reason. And Pippin picks it up and is bringing it up to Gandalf. And the description of this is really important. Gandalf says, here, my lad, I'll take that. I did not ask you to handle it. he cried, turning sharply and seeing Pippin coming up the stairs slowly, as if he were bearing a great weight. He went down to meet him and hastily took the dark globe from the hobbit, wrapping it in the folds of his cloak. So he's turning sharply. Pippin looks like he's bearing a great weight. He's hastily taking it back. And we learn that it's not something Saruman would have wanted to let go of. So we decide we're going to get out of here. We're taking this with us. We are, before the chapter ends though, we do have this really cute, no. Okay, this was what I was saying. Saruman, there's a great line that kind of sums up my opinions about where Saruman is. And Gandalf says this: I will do nothing to him. I do not wish for mastery. What will become of him I cannot say. I grieve that so much that was good now festers in the tower. Still for us things have not gone badly. Strange are the turns of fortune. Often does hatred hurt itself. That's probably one of my favorite lines. Often does hatred hurt itself. And then we end the chapter with this beautiful meeting between, well, this is not necessarily how we end the chapter, but Treebeard and Legolas meet. And it's very cute and it's very endearing. And I love Treebeard. And I just think we should say it was very cute. We don't need to talk about it, but Treebeard also really speaks highly of and loves Merry and Pippin. He says, I shall miss them. We have become friends in so short a while that I think I must be getting hasty, growing backwards towards youth perhaps. But there they are, the first new things under the sun, under sun or moon that I have seen for many a long, long day. I shall not forget them. I have put their names into the long list. Ents will remember it. Ents the earth-born, old as mountains, the wide walkers, water drinking, and hungry as hunters, the hobbit children, the laughing folk, the little people. They shall remain friends as long as leaves are renewed. Anyway, so the Ents are going to stay and watch over Saruman and make sure he never leaves. Amen. Hallelujah. So obviously, before we move on to the final chapter of book 3, the big difference between the book and the movie is that in the movie, Saruman is betrayed by Wormtongue in an even bigger way than throwing the Palantir out. He's stabbed quite literally in the back by Wormtongue, right? And falls off the tower. So it is very interesting that we leave him alive in the book. I was shocked, to say the least. I was agape. Fool of a toad. And leave behind these cutthroats and small ragtag that dangle at your tail. Oh yeah, I forget he said that. His axe is not for trees, but for orc necks. 42 he hewed in the battle. Who? Come now, that is a better story. Yes. Legolas stands up for Gimli, the friendship that keeps on giving. Until 7 times the years in which he tormented us have passed, we shall not tire of watching him. Yes. So Saruman is going to be watched for a very, very long time. And that gives us hope that everything's going to be okay. But we're going to try to do this. It's only like 16 pages of book, so I think we're going to be okay. Let's get through the Palantir. We're not in any means going to rush it. We're just trying to be a little more succinct, maybe, in side-off conversations. So to summarize what the Palantir is, it's this glass ball of sorts. I imagine it to be some sort of a ball sphere of sorts that we don't know much about it yet, but we know that it came from the tower. What we do know is that Pippin is having this desire to look into it. So the company, danger persists, so the company is getting away. They decide they don't have time to go all the way to Rohan, for it's too far. They're going to head to Helm's Deep. They've sent off 2 riders to go let everyone that's back at Helm's Deep know that's where we're coming, and we're going to be hasty, but we're with a lot more people, and where no one is allowed to go in groups of less than 2 anymore. So all of these things ladder up to, we're not necessarily taking our time, we're being as fast as we can, but we're in a large group, so it's going to take longer than it would have otherwise. We notice that Pip is starting to act strange. And he's asking a lot of questions about the glass ball. And he says he would like a look at the ball. They're trying to go to sleep, and Mary's like, you're just going to have to wait until morning. You can ride with Gandalf tomorrow, because on the way there, Mary had rode with Gandalf, and Pip, I believe, had taken a ride with Aragorn, I believe. So Pip does his best to try to sleep, but he can't fall asleep. So he conducts this scheme to get the ball out of where Gandalf is holding it, sleeping with it, right? So he replaces it with a different ball. Classic move. And I don't know how you feel with a small ragtag dangling behind you, but the ragtag is tired, and I will be glad to stop dangling and lie down. I love the Hobbit so much. So Pip is able to get the ball out of Gandalf, and he almost immediately wants to put it back, but his knees are wobbly, so he's like, okay, I can't put it back right away, so let me just take a deeper look at it. And again, Tolkien uses the air to help set the mood. The air seems still intense about him. At first, the globe was dark, black as jet, with the moonlight gleaming on its surface. Then there came a faint glow and stir in the heart of it, and it held his eyes, so that now he could not look away. Soon all the inside seemed on fire. The ball was spinning, or the lights within were revolving. Suddenly the lights went out. He gave a gasp and struggled, but he remained bent, clasping the ball with both hands. Closer and closer he bent, and then became rigid. His lips moved soundlessly for a while. Then, with a strangled cry, he fell back and lay still. The cry was piercing. The guards leapt down from the banks. All the camp was soon astir. Very incredibly dramatic, right? Very tension building, very keeps you on your toes. Because I think when you're introduced to this, it's like the writing around it, like we said, when Pippin picks it up, we're standing in front of Orthanc, he's walking like he's carrying a great weight. Gandalf very hastily takes it from him. And so now we kind of understand why. So Gandalf obviously wakes up, realizes that Pippin has stolen the super dramatic and yet super brief, indeed wild. So Gandalf comes to figure out what's going on. He realizes that Pippin has indeed stolen the Palantir, he says, so this is the thief, right? And he's trying to like get his meaning Pippin's attention. But Pippin is still very much like in this weird space. It is not for you, Saruman, he cried in a shrill and toneless voice, shrinking away from Gandalf. I will send for it at once. Do you understand? Say just that. Then he struggled to get up and escape, but Gandalf held him gently and firmly. And he says, Peregrine Took, come back. Pip relaxes and asks for forgiveness. He says he looked at the ball, and I saw things that frightened me. And then he came and questioned me, and he looked at me, and that is all I remember. And Gandalf is like, nope, that won't do. I'm going to need you to go more in depth. I'm going to need you to remember more. So he just commands him to speak. So this is where we learn. This is what Pippin saw. I saw a dark sky and tall battlements and tiny stars. It seemed very far away and long ago, yet hard and clear. And then the stars went in and out. They were cut off by things with wings, very big, I think, really, but in the glass they looked like bats, wheeling round the tower. I thought there were 9 of them. One began to fly straight towards me, getting bigger and bigger. It had a horrible, no, I can't say. Thank you for the 5. Aw, Chris. Thank you for that. I love that the films make us want to explore the lore. There's so much to know, almost endlessly. A beautiful and dark world he created. I agree. Yeah. I think it's such a great way. I know that, of course, many would say, read the books first. But I think there's also many that would try to read the books and be turned off by the laborious nature of them. And I say that with love. As an avid reader my entire life, I do not know a world in which I would have been able to dive into this book had I not watched the movie first. But I also say that not knowing what it would have been like to do the opposite. And there are clearly plenty of people who read these books and loved them so deeply without the movies ever existing. So, take that with a huge grain of salt. I know these books are phenomenal even without having watched the movies first. They just would have had to catch me on a vacation. I will read like 5 books on a vacation. I do have a healthy desire to read a lot. Okay, that's neither here nor there. We're in this moment. We're getting this information from Pip. I saw a dark sky and tall battlements and tiny stars. It seemed very far away and long ago, yet hard and clear. Then the stars went in and out. They were cut off by things with wings, very big, I think, really, but in the glass they looked like bats, wheeling round the tower. I thought there were 9 of them. One began to fly straight towards me, getting bigger and bigger. It had a horrible, no, I can't say. I tried to get away because I thought it would fly out, but when it had covered all the globe, it disappeared. Then he came. He did not speak so that I could hear words. He just looked and I understood. So you have come back. Why have you neglected to report for so long? I did not answer. Who are you? I still did not answer, but it hurt me horribly and he pressed me. So I said, a hobbit. Then suddenly he seemed to see me and he laughed at me. It was cruel. It was like being stabbed with knives. I struggled, but he said, wait a moment. We shall meet again soon. Tell Saruman that this dainty is not for him. I will send for it at once. Do you understand? Say just that. End scene. You cheated. You watched the movies with a friend who had read the books first. It's okay. I cheated. I watched the movies. And then now I have a book club every Monday about it. Not next Monday, though. We're taking next Monday off for the holidays. And I like taking a week off in between the books. So this tells us everything. Well, this tells us a lot of things we need to know, right? We know now that the way that Saruman and Sauron were communicating was through this sphere. And also we know that now, because Sauron knew that hobbits had the ring. That's what Sauron wants. Because the ring to him will give him the power he needs to control the world. Again, control being the big quest. And so obviously Sauron knows where Saruman is. So when he says, tell Saruman that his dainty is not for him, obviously that means the ring. But he also says, we shall meet again soon, which tells me that Sauron is not going to waste any time getting into action and getting his booty, or one of his servants' booties, over to Isengard. What does the voice in the glass ball think is going to happen if the captured hobbit tells Saruman exactly that? Do those words from a hobbit somehow have power over the wizard? Great question. I think those sentences, my opinion is they would strike fear in Saruman. Like, he would know that he's no match for Sauron, especially, well, we know that, he doesn't have any defenses, he doesn't have any orcs, he doesn't have anyone to help him fight should a battle appear at his front door. So that's kind of what I took from it. A great question. So a few things work in our favor, right? One, Saruman had decided to stay in the tower. So Sauron's going to go all the way there, and he's going to find Saruman alone. So he's going to probably figure it out rather quickly that the hobbit in question is not an Isengard, but that's a problem for another day. However, that does create a problem of we're leaving immediately. And the we in question is Gandalf and Pip are going to leave immediately. Gandalf also tells Pip, if you feel an itch in your palms again, tell me of it. So there does also seem to be this reckoning of like, well, I guess now we know what this is. And Gandalf hands it to Aragorn and says, will you, Aragorn, take the Orthanc stone and guard it? It is a dangerous charge. Dangerous indeed, but not to all, said Aragorn. There is one who may claim it by right. For this assuredly is the Palantir of Orthanc from the treasury of Elendil, set here by the kings of Gondor. Now my hour draws near, I will take it. Gandalf looks to Aragorn, and then to his surprise of the others. He lifted the covered stone and bowed as he presented it. Receive it, Lord, he said, in earnest of other things that shall be given back. But if I may counsel you in the use of your own, do not use it yet. Be wary. When have I been hasty or unwary, who have waited and prepared for so many long years? So there's this exchange of this, and it seems very regal, very royal, very respectful. Gandalf, while wise and great, is never one to act better than anyone else. He very much respects the seat of power that his friends, companions, and even enemies hold. And we see that in this moment when he is as respectful to Aragorn as he can about his stature and his throne and his presence. Yes. Yeah. Uther. Hold on, give me a second to get there. But it's totally fine that you put that in when you did. So we have this sweet moment. Pip and Gandalf are getting ready to go, or rather Gandalf is getting ready to go, right? He will smoke a bowl with you, won't he? But when we're preparing for this, we see in the sky a Nazgul, or we see a shadow cross over the moon, and we realize that it was a Nazgul and that they are carrying the riders. Yes, you know what I mean. The Nazgul, the messenger of Mordor. And so this changes things because this means that Sauron had no, you're fine. No, Chris, that's perfect. It's absolutely fine to bring in moments of levity in this chat because I'll get like super serious, and then when I watch these back, I'll be like, oh man, I was so serious. That's probably so boring. So I like when you guys bring in the humor to chat. You're totally fine. But seeing the Nazgul on the sky, we're obviously like, okay, now we have to. This expediates. That's a word. Sure. Our need to move quickly, and actually now no one's able to rest because previously just Gandalf and Pip were going to go, and Aragorn and the rest of the crew were going to take a moment. They were going to rest. They were going to gather themselves, and they were going to leave probably in the morning. So seeing the Nazgul on the side means that Sauron wasted literally 0 seconds and is set the Nazguls out, which means that they're already on their way to Isengard, which means that they're going to find out very soon that there's no hobbit there, that there's no ring there, that the Ents have come together to take down. They're going to learn everything that we just learned. And they're going to come for the ring. They're going to figure it out to some extent, right? So now everyone has to go. And Gandalf grabs Pip, gets on Shadowfax, and we start going on our way. This is where we start. Gandalf is singing to himself, and he's singing the lore. Tall ships and tall kings, 3 times 3. What brought they from the foundered land over the flowing sea? 7 stars and 7 stones and 1 white tree. And he says, I was just running over some rhymes of lore. The 7 stars and 7 stones, about the palantir of the kings of old. And so he's telling all this story to Pippin, who Pippin is a very curious hobbit and curious in nature. Is that where... Well, I'll read what Huther said, too. But if I had spoken sooner, I would not have lessened your desire or made it easier to resist. On the contrary, no. The burned hand teaches best. After the advice about fire goes to the heart. Yes. Thank you for that quote. It is also important what Sauron's conclusion of this is. Saruman has a hobbit and wanted it to show to Sauron what would that mean for Sauron? Great point. Because now that's fun. Okay, yes, thank you, because I glossed over that, didn't I? That would be very, what's the word? Disrespectful is coming to mind, obviously. But it would mean that that Saruman backstabbed Sauron and was betrayed him. You're bothered by Gandalf telling everyone to run. Let not the swift wait for the slow. Sounds like every man for himself. Oh my God. You're very right about that. That is actually makes me really sad. Yeah, quite a rare occurrence of Gandalf being kind of hasty in language like that, huh? Pippin always has to look. Yeah. Pippin is very inquisitive, isn't he? Isn't he? Okay, I know we have a note. Okay, so the explanation of Gandalf's lines of lore. This comes from various sources, most notably the Silmarillion. This is from Dar Photos in the community section on today's post for this book club. A note Numenor was an island west of Middle-earth given to men as a reward for helping defeat Morgoth in the First Age. Tall ships and tall kings, 3 times 3. In its later days, in the Second Age, the kings of Numenor came under Sauron's sway. He convinced them to attack Valinor to remove the curse of mortality. Valinor being the home of the gods, it didn't go well. There was a faction of Númenórean nobility who broke from the king called the Faithful. Elendil was the leader. Instead of going with the king, they sailed for Middle-earth in 9 ships. What brought they from the foundered land over the flowing sea? As part of the defeat of Númenor, Eru Iluvatar, the one god in Tolkien's world, sank Numenor into the sea. 7 stars and 7 stones and 1 white tree. 7 stars represents the Big Dipper. Oh, it was a Lendl symbol. The 7 stones are the Palantiri, and the white tree is a bit of story in and of itself. Is the white tree not the tree at, oh wait. It was a gift from the elves to Numenor as a sign of friendship. The Sauron advised kings of Numenor had forsaken that friendship, but the faithful did not. Isildur brought a seed from the tree when they fled the destruction. It grew to be the white tree in Minas Tirith. Oh, I guess I assumed it was the tree in Gondor. Or, yeah. Or am I thinking Minas Tirith? Cannot tell you in this moment where my brain was at with that. Thank you, Dar, for breaking down this lore. Think of this. These are 6 lines in Lord of the Rings referencing cataclysmic events about 4,000 years earlier, and they can almost be seen as throwaway lines here. Every time I venture into Middle-earth, I find something new. I definitely was like, this seems, for Gandalf to be saying it, I was like, this has got to be important. But you're right. I think on a first read, it would definitely be very throwaway-ish. The Nazgul that flew over would have been sent out before Pippin looked. Oh. I didn't pick up on that, Andrew. It's almost threatening. Saruman is showing off his hobbit, which is why I wondered whether Sauron really thought Saruman would respect the threat that the dainty is not for him. Great point. Because Sauron doesn't know that Saruman's not showing off the hobbit. Fair enough. If I was Sauron and invested my existence in a damn ring, I'd be upset beyond belief. The White Tree of Gondor is a sapling of the White Tree of Numenor named Limlock. Oh, thank you. Sauron is going to be hasty. Yep. Yes. Phenomenal callback to hasty. Yes, yes. So the stones originally were used for good and just communication throughout Middle Earth, it seems like. Maybe I'm oversimplifying that. So we do find out it was a black rider on wings, a Nazgul. It could have taken you away to the Dark Tower. Saruman certainly looked in the stone since the orc raid, and more of his secret thought, I do not doubt, has been read than he intended. So a message. So yeah. Okay. So Sauron had sent out his messengers to figure it out. Hi, Jess. The White Tree was also linked to the 2 trees in the Undying Land. Gandalf listing the original locations of the Palantiri. Yes. Oh, Amansul is the Weathertop where Frodo was stabbed. Interesting. Oh, Tolkien departs from many traditional folklores and imbues the sun with feminine traits and the moon with masculine. Oh, I didn't even pick up on that. I love that. Okay, yeah, so we talk about so Sauron will only believe that he is withholding the captive and refusing to use the stone. It will not help Saruman to tell the truth to the messenger. For Isengard may be ruined, yet he is still safe in Orthanc. So it's a good thing that he rejected us in letting him go, right? But even Gandalf cannot tell us how this will end. It may be that the counsels of the enemy will be confused or hindered by his wrath with Saruman. It may be that he will learn that I was there and stood upon the stairs of Orthanc with hobbits at my tail, or that an heir of Elendil lives and stood beside me. If Wormtongue was not deceived by the armor of Rohan. He would remember Aragon and the title that he claimed. That is what I fear. And so we fly, not from danger, but into greater danger. Every stride of Shadowfax bear you near the land of shadow Peregrine took. Yes. Oh, but a cute little thing. Pippin continues to ask questions, but I should like to know, this was before this conversation. Mercy, cried Gandalf, if the giving of information is to be the cure of your inquisitiveness, I shall spend all the rest of my days in answering you. What more do you want to know? Gandalf is like, I'm not doing this again. I'll answer your questions if it gets you to not do things that will harm us all. Me too, Chris. I love these chats so much. That's the fun thing is these stories, this story, there's different things you can find each time you read this story. At least that's what I'm told. And every time we meet, everyone has a different experience with it. And so there's so many different things that come up in these conversations. I'm just emotional and taken by the history, but that is valid and valuable and welcomed here in and of itself. To look across the wide seas of water of time, to the Tyrion the fair, and the perceive the unimaginable and mind of Feanir in their work. Yep. One thing to note, we're passing Helm's Deep. Pippin's like, I thought we were going there. To Minas Tirith, before the seas of war surround it. Oh, and how far is that? Leagues upon leagues, thrice as far as the dwelling of King Theoden. And there are more than 100 miles east from here, as the messenger of Mordor flies. Shadowfax must run a longer road, which will prove the swifter. We shall ride now till daybreak, and that is some hours away. Then even Shadowfax must rest. And in 2 days hence you shall see the purple shadow of Mount Mindoluin and the walls of the Tower of Denethor white in the morning. Run now, hope is in speed. As he fell slowly into sleep, Pippin had a strange feeling. He and Gandalf were still as stone, seated upon the statue of a running horse, while the world rolled away beneath his feet with a great noise of wind. And that is the end of Book 3 of Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. But Sauron will think there was a ring. Yeah. Well, because that's... Wild is bringing up a fair and valid point that would Saruman take the threats of Sauron... would he take them seriously if the situation were as Sauron thought it was, right? Because if Saruman had already stabbed Sauron in the back and then was kind of bragging about it, yeah, I think it's fair and valid to be like, but he probably would laugh that off, right? Probably. Also, at the end of Wild's outline of today's reading, they say, are you invested yet? So one's in chat if you're invested in the Lord of the Rings story. If Sauron loved it, he should have put a ring on it. One's in chat. And then let me just get a link here for you guys. Pardon me. So if you've been here in the last few weeks, you'll know that I said we were having a we're having a Lord of the Rings marathon watch party this weekend. It was supposed to be Saturday, and I very much apologize if anyone was only available Saturday and was excited to join for it. And if you are joining for it, it's in Discord. Unfortunately, I've started a new serving job at a wine bar, and the only days I'll be working will be Saturdays and Sundays. So I work 9:30 this Saturday and then 3:30 p.m. on Sunday. And so we won't be able to do it because I simply have 12 hours between getting off Saturday and going back to work on Sunday as is. So we're going to do it. We're still going to do it, but we're going to do it on Friday. So if you're still able to join or you haven't hopped into the Discord for whatever reason, you're more than welcome to do that. I post updates over there, but we will be doing it on Friday. And if you're able to join in for any reason, at any time, for a minute, for 10 minutes, for an entire movie, for all 3 movies, please do. It'll start around noon 30, 12:30 Central Time, which is about 1:30 Eastern and is 10:30 a.m. Pacific. So just a heads up on that change. If you guys aren't in the Discord and haven't seen that, there is a little change there. Still going to watch them, still doing the marathon, but yeah, a little change to that. I've been invested for over half a century. Lord of the Rings, and I never heard of it. Yeah. I loved it though. I was like, yes, finally invested. No, but yeah. With that said, that's the end of this stream today. So we're heading out of here. Reminder that there is no Lord of the Rings marathon a week from today. 1, because we're doing a marathon on Friday, and 2, because this Thursday is a holiday in America. So I've got a lot of family stuff to do, and so I'll be playing catch up from some of that stuff. So taking Monday off, but we're going to do that when we end a book. So expect a week off in between the endings of books to give myself a little time to catch up on other things. But we'll be back December 4th will be the next live stream. I will schedule that on YouTube on the 27th, a week out. So that's the tea. We're reading chapters 1 and 2 of book 4, which is not Return of the King, book 4 within the Two Towers book. Just chapters 1 and 2 for our next book club. Okay.